class. My name is Rudyard Kipling, and today I'm going to read you a story called The Elephant's Child by Rudyard Kipling. And let us begin our tale. In the high and far-off times, the elephant, O best beloved, had no trunk. He had only a blackish, bulgy nose as big as a boot, that he could wriggle about from side to side. But he couldn't pick up things with it. But there was one elephant, a new elephant, an elephant's child, who was full of satiable curiosity, and that means he asked ever so many questions. And he lived in Africa, and he filled all Africa with his satiable curiosities. He asked his tall aunt, the ostrich, why her tail feathers grew just so, and his tall aunt, the ostrich, spanked him with her hard, hard claw. He asked his tall uncle, the giraffe, what made his skin spotty, and his tall uncle, the giraffe, spanked him with his hard, hard hoof. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. He asked his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, why her eyes were red, and his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, spanked him with her broad, broad hoof. And he asked his hairy uncle, the baboon, why melons tasted just so, and his hairy uncle, the baboon, spanked him with his hairy, hairy paw. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. He asked questions about everything that he saw or heard or felt or smelt or touched. And all his uncles and aunts spanked him, and still he was full of satiable curiosity. One fine morning, in the middle of the procession of the equinoxes, this satiable elephant's child asked a new fine question that he had never asked before. He asked, "What does the crocodile have for dinner?" Then everybody said, "Hush," in a loud and dreadful tone. And they spanked him immediately and directly without stopping for a long time. By and by, when that was finished, he came upon Kolo Kolo Bird, sitting in the middle of a wait-a-bit thorn bush, and he said, "My father has spanked me, and my mother has spanked me. All my aunts and uncles have spanked me for my satiable curiosity, and still I want to know what the crocodile has for dinner." Then Kolo Kolo Bird said, with a mournful cry,
"Go to the banks of the great gray, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and find out."
That very next morning, he went to Kimberley, and from Kimberley to Kama's country, and from Kama's country he went east by north, eating melons all the time, till at last he came to the banks of the great, gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, precisely as Kolo Kolo Bird had said. Now you must know and understand, O best beloved, that till that very week, and day, and hour, and minute, this satiable elephant's child had never seen a crocodile, and did not know what one was like. It was all his satiable curiosity. The first thing that he found was a bicolored python rock snake curled round a rock. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but have you seen such a thing as a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?"
"Have I seen a crocodile? What will you ask me next?"
said the bicolored python rock snake in a voice of dreadful scorn. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but could you kindly tell me what he has for dinner?" Then the bicolored python rock snake uncoiled himself very quickly from the rock, and spanked the elephant's child with his scalesome, flailsome tail. So he said goodbye very politely to the bicolored python rock snake, and went on, till he trod on what he thought was a log of wood at the very edge of the great, gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees. But it was really the crocodile, O best beloved, and the crocodile winked one eye, like this. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but do you happen to have seen a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" And the elephant's child stepped back most politely, because he did not wish to be spanked again.
"Come hither, little one."
"Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but my father has spanked me and my mother has spanked me, not to mention my tall aunt the ostrich and my tall uncle the giraffe, who can kick ever so hard, as well as my broad aunt the hippopotamus, and my hairy uncle the baboon, and including the bicolored python rock snake, with the scalesome flailsome tail, just up the bank, who spanks harder than any of them, and so, if it's quite all the same to you, I don't want to be spanked anymore.
Come hither, little one, for I am the crocodile.
Then the elephant's child grew all breathless and panted and kneeled down on the bank and said, "You are the very person I've been looking for all these long days. Will you please tell me what you have for dinner?"
Come hither, little one, and I'll whisper.
The elephant's child put his head down close to the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth, and the crocodile caught him by the little nose, which up to that very week, day, hour, and minute, had been no bigger than a boot, though much more useful.
I think today I will begin with the elephant's child.
Then the bicolored python rock snake scuffled down from the bank and said,
My young friend, if you do not now, immediately and instantly, pull as hard as ever you can, it is my opinion that your acquaintance in the large pattern leather ulster will jerk you into yonder limpid stream before you can say, Jack Robinson.
This is the way bicolored python rock snakes always talk. Then the elephant's child sat back on his little haunches and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose began to stretch.
Rash and inexperienced traveler, we will now seriously devote ourselves to a little high tension, because if we do not, it is my impression that yonder self-propelling man of war with the armor-plated upper deck will permanently vitiate your future
So he
career.
pulled, and the elephant's child pulled, and the crocodile pulled. But the elephant's child and the bicolored python rock snake pulled hardest, and at last the crocodile let go of the elephant's child's nose with a plop that you could hear all up and down the Limpopo. Oh, best beloved, you will see and understand that the crocodile had pulled it out into a really truly trunk, same as all elephants have today. How would you like to spank somebody? Said the bicolored python rock snake. I should like it very much indeed, said the elephant's child. Well, said the bicolored python rock snake, you will find that new nose of yours very useful to spank people with. Thank you, said the elephant's child. I'll remember that. And now I think I'll go home to all my dear families and try. One dark evening he came back to all his dear families, and he coiled up his trunk and said, How do you do? They were very glad to see him, and immediately said, Come here and be spanked for your satiable curiosity. Pooh, said the elephant's child. I don't think you peoples know anything about spanking, but I do, and I'll show you. Then he uncurled his trunk and knocked two of his dear brothers head over heels. Oh, bananas, said they. Where did you learn that trick, and what have you done to your nose? I got a new one from the crocodile on the banks of the great, gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, said the elephant's child. I asked him what he had for dinner, and he gave me this to keep. Then that bad elephant's child spanked all his dear families for a long time, till they were very warm and greatly astonished. Well, that's all from me.